Good morning. You know, there are a lot of fun things that a minister gets to do. And then there's some things that are fun and not so fun. And this morning we're saying goodbye to someone. Susan and Hi and Mushu are moving. And Susan wanted to share a few words with you, and I want you to know how much we appreciate you. You leave, I'll never walk in here and not see you seated there. Every time I look at the little switch plates.
We'll keep looking at
And next year when we open our Christmas tree back up.
I just wanted to say what unity means to Hi and I and to Mushu. And 20 years ago, Hi and I were very happily together and just knew that there was something that was lacking, and that was spirituality. Now, Hi being Jewish and my being Methodist, both of us knew that we weren't taking each other to where we'd been. So we thought, let's try something new. And so first we tried Jews for Jesus, and it was lively, but it was just not us. And so we went home, and I had these little words, daily word, and every day I read it. And I said, I want daily word. That's what I want. So I went in the yellow pages and said, here I see it, and it's unity. So I called them up in Fort Lauderdale, and I said, are you daily word people? And they said, yes, we are. I said, okay, we're coming. And we did, and we never looked back. That was it. We got there, we sat down, we were perfectly comfortable. So then came time to move, and we first checked to see where unity was before we made our decision. So we came to Miko, Sebastian, which is between Vero and Melbourne. 2 churches. We said, oh, good, we'll go to each one. We'll just keep trading off. So we did that for a while, and then one time to go to the Vero church, and I said, it's too far. Let's not go there. Let's go to Melbourne again. And Hi said, well, actually, it's closer than Melbourne. I said, well, I guess we made our decision, haven't we? And that's what we did. We came here, walked in, and we just knew that was it. And that was when Beth was just starting. And then, so then we have children and grandchildren, and our daughter came to Vero to get married, and Reverend Beth got to marry her, which was our honor. They live in New Jersey. They came to us. And then 2 babies were born, and they came back to Reverend Beth for their christening and the welcome, and we just can't ask for any more than that. And then we decided it's time to get closer to our kids. So we found out where we want to go. Of course, first we found out Unity Church. We went there. We brought Mushu with us, because not everybody is like Beth, but they are. And we walked in with her, and everybody said hello, didn't say a word about Mushu being there. And then we sold our house, and ends up that Unity member is purchasing our home. Juanita Saylor. We did not know this ahead of time. We just knew that she walked in our home and said, I love this home. Then I found out that the family's been coming to Unity for 15 years. So if that's not a great universe unity story, nothing is. And that's how our life is. We love unity. We believe in the love unity gives us. And we ask for what we want and need, and it comes to us. Thank you so much. We're going to Wilmington, North Carolina.
Where it is snowing today.
Oh, well, it can only go up from there.
That's the exception, not the rule, I think. There was a student taking a walk with his professor, and his professor was one of those professors that was a student friend. He was always willing to give his time and his input. And as they were walking along, they went down a path and they came across a pair of shoes. And they supposed that the shoes belonged to someone that was out working in the field. And the student said, well, let's hide those shoes and play a trick. And the professor said we should never amuse ourselves at the expense of another. He said, you're pretty rich. Why don't we play a different trick? Why don't you put a coin in each of his shoes? And so that's what the student did. He put a coin in each of the shoes, and they went, and they hid behind a tree, and pretty soon the person that was working in the field came back, and he put his foot in his shoe, and something was in there, and he reached down, and it was a coin, and you could just tell by his face that surprise. He kind of real, and he put it in his pocket, and then he went to put on his other shoe. Oh my gosh. And there was another coin. And the student and the teacher got to watch as the man turned and started giving thanks, talking to God, saying, thank you, God, for answering my need, talking about his wife being sick and his children being hungry, and that God had met his very need. And the student was deeply affected, and his eyes filled with tears. Now, said the professor, are you not much better off and much better pleased than if you had pulled that trick? And the youth replied, well, you've taught me a lesson. You've taught me that lesson that it's better to give than to receive. You've taught me that lesson, that golden rule lesson, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This morning we're starting a series based on this book by Karen Armstrong. It's 12 Steps to a Compassionate Life. Karen Armstrong was a Catholic nun, and she left the convent, went to become a literature teacher, and began writing. And she's written over 26 books about all the different faiths and the major religions. She studied Islam, Judaism, Christianity, what they have in common, and how religion has shaped history and how it drives current events. And when she looked around, she saw what you and I saw and see. She sees that wars are started by greed and envy, but they're cloaked in religious language. People using their faith to excuse their actions. In the book it says it's not religion that causes all the problems. It's not the belief in a higher power or devotion and commitment. The problem is those things that our Buddhist friends call the three poisons: greed, hatred, and ignorance. And we know that hatred is just fear being projected outward. The three poisons can infect religion like a virus, just like it can infect politics, academics, and anything else we do. Karen Armstrong looked around and she saw that in her own Catholic church they were ignoring abuse to women and children. They were ignoring the sexual abuse by the priest. She saw that there were religions that were focused on divisive things like, should a woman be ordained or not? She noticed that this was not good, divisive. And she said we need to change our focus. We need to bring compassion back to religion. And she writes, I think that in our very polarized, dangerously polarized world, we can't afford yet another divisive discourse that puts us at odds with one another. All the world's religions say that the way to find what we call God, or Brahman, or Nirvana, or Tao, is to get beyond the prism of egotism, of selfishness, which holds us in a little deadlock and limits our vision. That if we can get beyond that, especially in the practice of compassion, when we dethrone ourselves from the center of our world and put another there, we will live much more richly and intensely. She wants compassion back in our religion. And so I ask you, do you know what compassion is? It comes from a Latin word, patere. It means to suffer, to undergo, to experience. It means to endure something with another person, to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes, to feel somebody else's pain as our own, and to enter generously into their point of view. And here at Unity, we have that vision. We want to create a world that works for all. And some of the things that we do, we're promoting Be Peace in our congregation, and we want to bring it to our local schools. We promote nonviolent communications. You know, I think that the new Pope, Pope Francis, is talking about compassion, and that's why he's being so well received. There was a little girl who was late coming home for dinner, and you know, her mom made that expected irate parent's demand, "Where were you? Why aren't you home?" And the little girl replied, well, she had stopped to help Jamie because Jamie fell and her bike broke. And her mom said, but you don't know anything about fixing bikes. And the little girl said, yeah, but I could stop and help her cry. It's compassion. Compassion is aptly summed up in our golden rule. And I gave you a handout. And on one side of the handout is all of the different faiths. There have the golden rule in there. And if you go on your computer and you Google golden rule, you will find a rich history. It's traced all the way back into for as long as there's been recorded history, there's been this golden rule. All of the major religions have this golden rule. The thing is, it's not so easy to be compassionate as a human being. And why is that? Because of our physiology. There's a part of our brain, this little bitty reptilian, amphibian part of our brain, not amphibian, reptilian. It's the amygdala. And that part of our brain is the part that is very concerned with what Karen Armstrong calls the 4 F's. Feeding, fighting, fleeing, and reproduction. Back at the beginning, it didn't matter whether we got along with our neighbors. It mattered whether we were eating and surviving. And since that time, our brain has evolved, and we now have the neocortex, which has gotten larger and larger, and it allows us to be conscious. It gives us the ability to reason. You know, we don't have to work so hard at surviving now. We can spend our time thriving by nurturing our children and developing cooperative relationships. You and I, we get to decide whether we have hatred or love, war or peace, greed or generosity, selfishness or altruism. But just because we get to decide, it doesn't stop that little part of our brain from firing and informing us, because that's its job. It informs us, but then we get to look at what we're informed about and make a decision how we're going to react. I know I've told this story before. It's a Native American story of a grandfather with his grandson. He was talking about life, and he says, there's a terrible fight going on inside of me between two wolves. One of these wolves is evil. It's angry and envious and has sorrow and regret and greed and arrogance and self-pity and guilt and remorse and resentment and inferiority and false pride and superiority and ego. And he said, and this other wolf is good. It's the wolf that is joy and peace and hope and love and serenity and humility and kindness and benevolence, empathy and generosity, truth, compassion and faith. And this fight that's going on inside of me is going on inside of you. And the grandson thought about it for a moment, and he said, well, grandfather, which wolf will win? And the grandfather replied, the one you feed. So one of our basic truths is what we focus on grows. Where we put our attention grows. And that's why we're putting our attention on compassion, because we want to see compassion grow in this world to create this world that works for all. Karen Armstrong, the author of our book, is doing this in a big way. In 2007, she did a TED talk. Do you know what TED is? If you look on the internet and look up TED, you'll find lots of people make small or even longer talks, and they're under technology, entertainment, and design. Their ideas spreading. And so every year there are these TED messages that are put on the internet to help us all. And every year they make an award for to people who are making a difference in the world. And so they gave Karen Armstrong $100,000 and asked her to make a wish. And this is her wish. My wish is that TED would help me create and craft a charter for compassion that would restore compassion to the center of the religious life. And instead of seeing religion as part of the problems of our world, would actually help religion to make a positive contribution toward peace. So that's what she did. She started writing this charter for compassion. And with this computer technology, she had the input of thousands of people all over the world. It was a multilingual website. People from over 100 countries added their voices into the writing of this charter. And when they were through, the charter was then reviewed by a group called the Council of Conscience. And so you'd ask, who is the Council of Conscience? I'd never heard of them. They are made up of a multinational group of faith leaders and from Judaism, Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, and Confucianism. And so you have a copy on the side of the charter, and we're going to have it read to us right now.
The principle of compassion lies at the heart of all religious, ethical, and spiritual traditions.
Calling us always to treat all others as we wish to be treated ourselves.
Compassion compels us to work tirelessly to alleviate the suffering of our fellow creatures.
Withdrawing ourselves from the center of our world and put another there.
To honor the inviolable sanctity of every single human being.
Treating everybody without exception.
With absolute justice, equity, and respect.
It is also necessary in both public and
consistently and empathically from inflicting pain.
To act or speak violently out of spite, chauvinism, or self-interest.
To impoverish, exploit, or deny basic rights to anybody.
And to incite hatred by denigrating others, even our enemies.
Is a denial of our common humanity.
We acknowledge that we have failed to live compassionately.
And that some have even increased the sum of human misery in the name of religion.
We therefore call upon all men and women to restore compassion
To the center of morality and religion.
to return to the ancient principle
That any interpretation of Scripture
That breeds violence,
hatred
or disdain
is illegitimate.
To ensure that youth are given accurate and respectful information.
about other traditions, religions, and cultures.
To encourage a positive appreciation
Of cultural
and religious diversity.
to cultivate
and informed empathy
With the suffering of all human beings.
even those
regarded as enemies.
We urgently need to make compassion a clear, luminous, and dynamic force in our polarized world.
Rooted in a principled determination to transcend selfishness.
Compassion can break down political, dogmatic, ideological, and religious boundaries.
Born of our deep interdependence, compassion is essential for human relationships and to a fulfilled humanity.
It is the path to enlightenment and indispensable in the creation of a just economy and a peaceful global community.
Can you imagine a world where everyone is focused on our golden rule, focused on compassion and being compassionate to the people around them? I love that image. This week, my invitation to you is that you consider this thought about the golden rule, that you read the Charter for Compassion, that you think about how compassion is showing up in your world. Every week we sing, "Let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me." Well, the truth is that compassion and peace does begin with me and with you and with the person sitting next to you. If we commit to start from right here, right now, focusing on doing unto others as we would have them do unto us, that would be a great beginning. So for the next 6 Sundays, we're going to be talking about the 12 steps to a compassionate life. We have the books in our bookstore. You can get them on Amazon. And in our Sunday school class, we're going to be following the reading guide for this book. You might want to put that charter up on your refrigerator as we go through the series and read it every day. Find some time this week to look at your own life and to look at places where you might be less than compassionate, to look at those places where you might be able to put the golden rule into practice in a greater and deeper way. I know that if you and I do that, it'll make a difference. Karen Armstrong says that this is not something that is a quick fix. And what do we like? We like quick fixes. But this kind of change is slow, undramatic, and incremental. But I think that it's worth the work. What about you?